You're listening to the Men's Dating Mastery Podcast with host Alec Chase, bringing you the experts in dating, sex, and relationships.
Hey guys, welcome back to MDM. In this episode, I'm speaking with style consultants Kylie and Jonathan. But before we get to the interview, I wanted to share some thoughts on why I chose to dedicate an episode to clothing and style. When dating advice for men started to really take off, and this was led by the pickup community, a lot of guys were running around in really flamboyant outfits like snakeskin suits, feather boas, and fuzzy hats. This was known as peacocking, and it was invented by a pickup artist named Mystery. I'm sure that many of you know who he is. Mystery, however, was a magician and a stage performer. So all of these wild outfits were congruent with who he was as a person, but it was completely out of place for guys who were trying to emulate him. Then, at some point years later, certain coaches started completely dismissing the role of personal style and saying that it was all about how you carried yourself in an interaction with a woman. One book actually suggested that guys go for 30 days without showering and then try to meet women that way. You don't need much more than basic common sense to see how ridiculous both of these angles are. At the end of the day, clothes do matter. It's not so much about looking pretty, but about what your appearance communicates about who you are as a person. Generally speaking, if your wardrobe is well put together, then a woman is more likely to perceive you as a guy who has his overall life together. Whether we're going on a job interview, wedding, funeral, or for a jog in the park, we know to wear clothes that are appropriate to that occasion. So there's no reason to assume that dating would be any different. When I was preparing for this interview, I came across some interesting research, and I'll share some of the highlights that I thought were particularly cool. In one example, an analysis of 109 different studies showed that people inferred a person's competence, power, intelligence, character, sociability, and mood based on how they dressed. And speaking of intelligence, another study found that teachers were found to form opinions about a student's intelligence based on clothing, and well-dressed students were actually graded more favorably, demonstrating a bias. Another analysis demonstrated that how a person was dressed impacted others' behavior towards them, including how helpful and obedient they were, how closely they stood to the person in a conversation, how much they disclosed in conversation, and their aggression. One simple example that was provided is how quickly a salesperson would serve a retail customer based on their clothing. You can guess how that one played out. A lot of this reminded me of the what is beautiful is good hypothesis, which Kaylin White spoke about in episode number 4. The theory basically demonstrated that we tend to attribute positive character traits to people who we deem attractive and negative character traits to those who we do not find attractive. So it would be logical to extend this idea to clothing because it has such a significant impact on our appearance. What I found particularly interesting in my research is the impact of clothing on how you feel about yourself and on your performance. For example, sports teams that wear black uniforms tend to feel more powerful and behave more aggressively on the field. Then, in one study, students who were told to wear a white doctor's coat scored better on tests. Interestingly, students who wore the same coat but were told that it was an artist's coat did not do as well. Anyway, I don't usually talk this much, so that's enough for me. You can hear the rest from Kylie and Jonathan since they're the real experts. As always, if you like the show, then please take a moment to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and a positive review in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Now on to Kylie and Jonathan. Hey, Kylie and Jonathan, thank you for joining me today.
Hey.
Hey, good to be here.
To get us started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do as style consultants?
Sure. Yeah, so Kylie and Jonathan are essentially a Toronto-based personal styling team. And what we do together is we work with both males and females, specifically on their wardrobes. And what we are doing essentially is helping them feel their best and feel their most confident selves when they're out in their world. And we like to say that we do that from the inside out. And what that means is we really look at the person as an individual, and we take a look at who they are, what makes them tick, what's their lifestyle like. And then from there, we kind of formulate how best to allow them to use their style and their wardrobe to start the process of just being their very best selves.
And just an extension of that, what we tend to work with is really around confidence, personal empowerment, self-development type of things. When you start to figure out the message that you want to send to people and what fits for you and who you are as a person, when you start to line that up with your clothes, which are always sending messages to people around you, it helps your confidence improve. It helps your communication to improve. It helps you think about yourself more clearly, and all that relates to feelings of confidence and personal empowerment.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Those are a lot of great points that we'll certainly be discovering throughout this conversation. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I would love to start with talking about how other people perceive us. I mean, I know intuitively we all understand that people look at us and judge us based on our appearance, but there's also a fair amount of research that goes to support this. And I was wondering if you could just give us a few highlights from that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we live in a world where we are always being judged, and we are being judged visually first without us even opening our mouths. So when we look at a person, we're not even consciously aware sometimes that we're making deductions about who they are, what's their level of wealth, how much are they paying attention to cleanliness, and what they might even do in their job. Like we're taking all this in by looking at someone. So Jonathan and I, we really work on the whole communication aspect of what clothing is doing for people.
One study that looks at how men and women relate. I remember seeing it not too long ago on some sort of documentary about attraction and stuff. And just by changing men's clothes and then asking women about their level of attractiveness, would they go on a date with this man, showed that the same man in different clothes, women would be responding differently to. So a man that looked like he was your average guy, I think this was actually looking a bit at jobs. And so a guy that was a retail guy, down dressed fairly casually, women were less likely to go on a date with him or less likely to be impressed. But once the same man was placed in a suit, was told that he was a financial guy, women were much more likely to go on a date or rate him as more attractive. And I've come across other studies as well that have showed similar, that as clothes and occupations switch in terms of the information that women are given, they will change what they think about a man. And on one hand, that's potentially, you could think that maybe that's sad or shallow or something, but it does seem to be that is the reality of how people are relating to each other, and they are looking for cues of success, cues of people being confident in themselves before they want to actually relate to people.
Yeah, and we have a quick anecdotal thing to share with you. I actually have a friend who's on the dating scene right now, and she went on a date with a guy and really thought he was attractive, thought he was well dressed. And as she sat down to chat with him, she noticed he was wearing really, really bad running shoes. And she couldn't stop thinking about that. And she couldn't get past that enough to even get to the point where the date could begin. And that really stuck with us and really, really yet again reiterated that, if something is off in that message that you want to send, specifically in dating as well, then you really are going to be stuck.
Actually, I'm really glad you touched on that. And I've got a question. This one's probably more for you, Kylie, just to get a woman's perspective. But sitting there on a date with a guy who's wearing running shoes, what's the issue? I mean, what are some of the thoughts that might be going through his date's head as a result of seeing running shoes on him? Okay, so they're running shoes. They don't look good, but what's the big deal? Like, what are some of the associations that his date might be making in her mind as he's sitting in front of her?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with running shoes. We all own them. We use them. They're fitting for when you're running or when you're working out or when you're doing something active. The problem is that my friend, her lifestyle is such that she's going out to lots of events and she's going out to a lot of things in her life that there is that element of dressing up. And I think she was stuck on this. Okay, well, am I going to now if I go further with this guy, does he even own a pair of good shoes? Do I have to try to change him? Is he going to fit into my environment? Am I going to have to be worried about this if I'm going out with this guy? Because does he not get it? So I think some of these reinforcements are going through the person's mind and they can't get off that point. So it's not that the running shoes are bad. It's that they weren't fitting in this context of the environment of the date in terms of the expectations.
Yeah, I think another thing that I've sort of seen or I've heard from different people is, and even if you think about it from a male's perspective, like a woman wants to feel proud and comfortable with a guy she's out out with and being seen with.
For sure.
And as a guy as well, you want to feel the same with the woman you're out with. So if you're not putting some effort in, if you're not feeling proud about yourself or showing yourself as a person who feels really good about themselves, it's something that's a bit of a turnoff for another person, or a bit of a worry, particularly if there's someone who is social, they have events they're going to, they may be thinking about you going with them to those events. If they're going to feel embarrassed or nervous, that's extra stress for them.
Yeah, I mean, further to that point, imagine had he been wearing just a nice loafer or something that was just that step above a running shoe. She wouldn't have even given it a thought. They could have gotten straight to their personal core and they could have had great conversation, and it wouldn't have been a sticking point for her.
Yeah, and I think if a woman can automatically see herself with a man, then it's going to be a lot easier to relate to her, to approach her, to talk to her, to get a conversation going, or to have a great date. But if she can't automatically see herself with you as a man, you're going to have to do a lot of work to overcome that initial doubt, which is just making your job harder.
Yeah, and I think what's really powerful in what you guys are saying right now is that the clothes you wear are communicating things about your, I almost want to call it social intelligence. Running shoes in and of themselves are not a big deal, but it might suggest that if you didn't have the wherewithal or the social intelligence to wear a proper pair of shoes on a date, how will you present yourself and your date when you're out in public?
It's nail on the head for sure.
And that creates a worry, which creates a doubt, which means there's more effort. And so the woman's more likely to not follow up.
So I'd like to get into another piece of research. And I heard you guys talk about this when I met you in person, but this is how do clothes that we wear actually affect ourselves? So how we feel about ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, and as well as how it can actually impact our performance, because I know you guys talked about that as well.
So we've, just doing research with our work and found some cool little case studies. One in particular involved just the use of a Superman shirt. And so they had a bunch of psychology students and they divided into 3 groups, one of which had a shirt with the Superman logo on it. The other was just a plain blue t-shirt. And the other was people just wearing their own clothes. And they had each people do some tests about their social perceptions and how they felt about themselves in social groups. And they found a really interesting correlation that people who were wearing the Superman t-shirts rated themselves as much more confident and feeling more superior to others, as well as even feeling stronger than other people who rated lower on the scores when in their own clothes or just in a plain blue t-shirt. So that's a really interesting, simple little exercise around how just a logo on a shirt can change your perception of yourself within the social environment.
Yeah, and in working with our clients, we actually started to see that they would, they'd be putting on these clothes that they'd never put on before that were really working for them. And they were seeing themselves in this new light. And all of a sudden they got really happy. And so Jonathan and I came up with what we call the clothing feedback loop.
So we came up with this idea of the clothing feedback loop where you're always at the center of your world and you're walking around your day-to-day life and your clothes are always with you wherever you go. So your clothes are always there when you're interacting with people. So, and of course, when you're walking around, you're thinking about things, you have feelings about yourself, you have an attitude that you have, your mood changes throughout the day. So there's this internal process that's happening. And when you're wearing clothes, if you wear nice clothes that fit you well, you can affect your internal processing because you feel better, you feel put together, you feel prepared. So clothes can have an impact on what you think inside of yourself. But then, of course, in the outside world, people see you and then they react to you and respond to you. So if they are responding to you based on what you're wearing, they are giving you feedback that you then take inside yourself, which again affects your feelings, your attitude, and how you perceive yourself.
And so Jonathan and I sort of, again, anecdotally with our own experience with clients and then, talking about the loop, as well as some research that is out there that supports it. But really what's happening is it can work for you or against you. So the work that we're doing is we're trying to get people to consciously be aware that the clothing they put on their bodies can positively affect that loop, meaning that if they want to feel good and they want to have positive responses from people, they can set it up so that no matter the environment they're walking into, they can control that part of making sure their message is on point and feeling positive about the task at hand.
And in the dating world specifically, as a guy, if you you put yourself together and you think, hey, I've got a nice blazer on, I've got some nice jeans, I feel good. You go out, you notice maybe a few women smile at you. You maybe start chatting with a few women and they seem to respond favorably. That's giving you positive feedback, which is then building your internal confidence that says, hey, I'm worth something. Women like talking to me. It makes it easier for you to put the energy out to talk to women. But on the other hand, if you had some old hoodie on, some old jeans, they weren't fitting, old running shoes, you didn't put in effort, you go out, women don't notice you, women don't smile, they seem to avoid you. You try to talk to women, they brush you off. That's giving you a negative feedback, which makes you feel that you're not that great. You don't know how to relate to women. It's hard, and that's going to send you down the negative. So that's kind of how that feedback loop works within the social environment and then say in the dating environment itself.
So that's actually a perfect place to jump into my next question. And that's when it comes to women specifically, what are they attracted to when it comes to wardrobe on a man? What are the specific items that, would resonate well with women? We were to generalize, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It is sort of specific to, the woman and the man, but there are some generalizations. And basically, if fit, I think, is the most important quality that Jonathan and I start with when working with anyone. If you're wearing clothes that don't fit you, you're kind of going to look like a boy trying to be a man in there, and it's just not going to work. So that's the number one thing, I think. If, again, to Jonathan's earlier point, talking about the clothing feedback loop, if a woman can't see you, you're hiding, there's energy in that, and it's not going to be in the man's favor. But I think women are attracted to guys that are very well put together, but still approachable. Not the really, not the really showy, flashy guy. And a guy who's comfortable in his skin would be pretty key, I think.
I think. I mean, obviously there could be specific items. Like sometimes women say they love a guy in a vest, they love a guy in a blazer, they love a guy in good fitting jeans. So those are all clues as to things women may generally find attractive. I don't know. I don't have anything to say beyond that.
I mean, I guess because it is so specific, Like, I mean, you will often hear some weird things like, oh my gosh, I love a mustache. Well,
sure. There's women that are into beards. Yeah. There's a big beard thing that's been happening.
Every guy should have facial hair, and otherwise you're not going to get a date. Like, we would never go that specific. But I think those main rules, like quality clothing and coming across as successful and happy and really, being your own guy, I think is something that you can do with clothes.
But I think a point is along those lines is to be aware that different women may be looking for different things, and so in a way, being aware that you do have an audience. And so if you are a guy who has a great beard and and can just really rock that, then you can use that to your advantage. And some women are going to hate it and they're not going to like it, but there's going to be a whole bunch of women that do. So if you're okay with that and you're finding that women you're attracted to are being attracted back, then it's all going to work. And similar for your sense of style, it's just knowing that you have an audience and that for women that you want to connect with you, some will be drawn to that, and you want to make sure you have your audience targeted so that you're sending the right message to the women you want to meet.
Well, and it goes back to self-confidence. I mean, if you're true to yourself and you're doing something that's true to you, you're a guy that really rocks the beard and that's your thing, then that's what you've got to be in the world, because otherwise you're attracting the wrong person anyways if you're not doing something that's you.
That's actually exactly how I'm interpreting everything you're saying now, is that there are 10 million ways a guy can dress. And what I feel is that it's important that no matter what style you choose, it's got to be congruent with who you are. So for example, if you're an artist, you might want to dress like the best looking artistic guy out there, as opposed to putting on a really nice suit if you can't relate to that suit.
Yeah. You're going to feel more relaxed when you dress according to how you see yourself. And the more relaxed you feel means you're more at ease, which means you feel more confident, you're more likely to take risks, you're more likely to say things in the moment and be spontaneous. And those are all qualities that are really attractive and make for great ways of relating to people.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about any situation, even for yourself in life, I know we could all say this, is if you have your own area of self-doubt on anything, you just won't be that comfortable person. You won't be able to own your uniqueness.
I think also from what I've seen in my own experiences, women tend to want to date a guy who's the real deal. And all of us as people have that in us. We want to relate to people who are real. And we are very sensitive to when someone comes off as fake, someone comes off as trying too hard, someone comes across as trying to hide something. And so I think when you're in the dating environment and you're trying to meet people, the more authentic you can be to who you are, the more you don't have to hide anything. You don't have to split your energy into trying to keep something hidden and try to show something you're not. Then you are just going to have a much more relaxed, confident vibe that is going to be naturally attractive. And it's going to give you a lot more power in the dating world, looking for people you want to connect with.
Yeah. And Jonathan and I will often have the conversation with clients that, your uniqueness can actually be your edge in your own lifestyle and your own world. So once you're comfortable saying, this is like, I rock this, I own this, I'm doing this, and this is me, and I'm totally comfortable. And now look out. Doesn't matter what my goals are or what I'm about to do, but I'm doing it with my complete 100%.
That's great. I think that's really important. So I'm glad you guys elaborated on that. I'd like to jump back to a comment, Kylie, you made a little while back. And that's the fact that, there's a difference between a guy looking good, being well put together, and a guy that's just over the top, a little overly concerned with his looks. Can you elaborate on that point a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's that sense of maybe being a little too into yourself, or a little on that egotistical end of things, and that often will actually be truly an insecurity. So somebody that isn't secure in their skin and is trying too hard. And also, we actually see in the male-female dynamic, we often see that, when you're first meeting someone on that dating spectrum, there can be that sense of competing for well, I'm hot, you're hot, whatever it may be. And so I think guys could maybe start to think on dates, like, let the woman shine as the beautiful one, and I'm just going to be hanging back, and I'm going to be, as Jonathan said, the real deal, as opposed to, I'm coming in, I got my $200,000 car, and I'm zooming in my flashy suit, and I got the watch, and my hair's coiffed, and look out, here I am. Like, you're going to leave the woman kind of being like, well, so much for me trying to look hot on this date.
Yeah, and I think also there's a natural suspicion for someone who's showing too much up front, that they are trying to buy attention, buy time, or again, just have an insecurity about something else. So they have to really do make a showy sort of appearance.
I actually read a summary of a really interesting study just the other day, and it pointed out that people who were a little over the top with how they presented themselves, so wearing, extremely expensive clothes at all times, things like that those behaviors were often associated with narcissism.
Yeah, I definitely think, I've seen people around in the city just walking around day to day, and I could see that that's the vibe. That's the assumption you make. Even if it's not true, I definitely have that impression that that's the first impression I have of that person, that they're really into themselves, and that's a bit of a turnoff.
Well, it goes back to, clothing communicates to people. And to Jonathan's point, if you're not that guy, if your real life is not this flashy, thing, and you're out there projecting that, then no one's going to get those layers peeled away.
So let's give the guys some concrete tips. If they're going out and they're shopping for clothes, what should be paying attention to? So you've mentioned fit. Anything else? Any specific items or colors that are just universal that every guy should, really have in his wardrobe?
Yeah, so we'll actually say fit again, because fit is really, really important. And that is definitely the first place to start. And that is something that we see over and over again with our clients, as well as just observing when we're out in different situations. I've seen so many guys who I will look at and I'll see that they could be handsome guys. They're good looking guys, but you can't see it because they're hiding underneath the clothes that don't fit them. They look like little boys in clothes that are too big for them. And when they could, in fact, be, decent looking guys, normal looking guys, they look silly. So definitely be paying attention to fit. There's lots of stuff on the internet, in GQ magazine, Esquire, stuff like that there's always talk about fit. So if you just start doing some research.
It's like that, with housing, and they say location, location, location. Well, right. We say fit.
And then after fit, then you do want to start making sure you're looking at quality. You want to have some clothes that are decent quality, you want your clothes to be looking sort of new and fresh. If they're starting to get worn out, if you had clothes for years, that's a good sign that they're not really good for you anymore. So you want to make sure that they're just in good shape, and they're
Good, yeah.
Good quality.
Not looking old and ratty, and the clothes, just as you wear them, they will break down.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to look like a creeper, for lack of a better word. So again, if your clothes are too big, if you have hoodies, if you have big jackets, I actually have a personal friend who's a super nice guy, really caring guy, and for years he had big oversized clothes, had a big trench coat that he wore. It was just comfortable stuff he liked to wear. He started getting feedback that people used to think he was this really creepy guy, and he didn't even know because he just didn't think about clothes. So that's where, you want to be wearing quality clothes, fit nice things that project a guy who's thinking about what he's wearing and has put some thought into his appearance.
And again, we're not necessarily saying, you have to buy expensive clothing and you have to buy designer clothing. That, there are lots of good quality clothes on the market, but you just want to pay attention to that. I think there is a bit of an attitude with clients that we've worked with, at least. There is that attitude of, oh my gosh, I'm getting a bargain, I'm getting a deal, I'm going to buy 5 of them. And meanwhile, those 5 items don't work. So it doesn't matter if you have 1 item or 5 items, they don't work. So why not spend your money on the items that work for you? And it doesn't even mean having a lot of clothes in your closet. It means having the right clothes in your closet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What about colors? Are there any specific colors that should be a staple in a guy's closet?
Yeah, so colors are pretty specific to each individual person, just because of our skin tone, our hair tone, our eye color. So everyone has different color ranges that work best for them. But you're definitely going to want to have some degree of more darker formal colors, and those could be black. But better choices tend to be sort of navy blues, dark grays. They're very neutral. They have a bit of color to them as opposed to the black, which is just heavy and dark, and also a little bit more interest. And then patterns as well.
Textures.
Yeah, because what happens a lot of times for people is they'll just wear solid colors, and then their outfits look like these color blocks. So it might be red shirt, black jacket, blue jeans, and it's sort of like 3 separate color blocks. But if you have a bit of pattern, if you start to relate colors together, you create an overall look, which is a lot stronger and more put together than just as if you throw on 3 random clothes.
Oh, wow. I'm glad I asked you that question because I did not know that.
Well, you're not alone.
Yeah,
put it that way.
It's pretty common. If you walk around and just look at what people are wearing, you'll see it all the time.
Yeah, and then obviously beyond that point, even there's accessorizing, and there's accessorizing the right way, and there's accessorizing the wrong way, and so there is all a balance in all of those things.
And for guys, it's really simple when it comes to accessories. Much simpler than women. You just want to have a decent watch. A watch is a great. It's just a great item to wear. I love watches myself, and it's a great thing for people to compliment on. So if you spend a bit of money getting a nice watch, that'll go far. And then basically a belt and a nice pair of shoes. If you have a blazer, you can certainly have a pocket square, or you can be wearing a tie of some sort. But for guys, it is really simple to accessorize, and you don't need to go over the top.
Mm-hmm. Layering even.
Yeah, so layering. So you wear a shirt with a sweater on top, throw a blazer on top of that. The layering just has an elevated look to it. So that's definitely one way to go. But you're going to have a guy's got to have a nice pair of jeans that look new and in good condition, a nice fitting blazer, a couple of dress shirts, a couple of sweaters. You can mix and match that, and you've got a few outfits right there.
Actually, I just want to ask you one last question about wardrobe. We were talking about, putting together a good wardrobe without necessarily spending a lot of money. And where my thought immediately went to is, lately there's been a lot of tailors that have popped up, but unlike traditional tailors, they don't make things here locally. They actually send measurements over to Asia, and then those clothes come back in 4 to 5 weeks, and you've got yourself kind of a custom made shirt or suit that's for more or less the price of what you pay for something off the rack, except that it's made for you. I was wondering if you guys are familiar with that, and if you had any comments as to the quality of it, because it's still fairly new.
Yeah, I actually do. I used to work in a custom suiting store, and I was taking measurements. I was doing adjustments, pinning adjustments, and stuff like that. And it was actually quite a fun job. For about a year, I was doing that. And it's definitely a way to go. A lot of people, everyone has different body shapes, and the off-the-rack style clothes are best attempts at fitting certain body types. but they are limited because they have to be mass produced and they're not going to be customized to a specific person's body. So we definitely have recommended to clients on occasion that in order to get something to really fit them properly, the custom route is the way to go. I mean, you're going to want to do your research. There are lots of places here in Toronto that do custom suiting. Some of them do them overseas. Some of them do their work here. There's going to be different prices. And you have to experiment a little bit, just like when you're shopping. If you send in your measurements and you get some weird shirts back, there's an indication that something's gone wrong, or perhaps the quality is not as good as you would like, and it's not worth that particular tailor or custom suiting option is not the best. But when it does come to suits specifically, it definitely makes sense to consider and look at the custom suiting route because, as you mentioned, the price point is fairly low, and you're going to get, if it's done properly, a better fitting suit than you would just buying one off the rack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Jonathan and I, we're quite focused on lifestyle first before we work with a client, because we're not going to recommend someone, invest heavily in that kind of thing if really they're going to wear a suit once every 3-4 months. So really it's paying attention to, context in your own life and when and where you're going to wear these items, and then knowing, well, how much money do I need to invest in it? And often you can tailor an off the rack item so that it is more fitted to you, rather than going, the overseas route. But really we kind of look at all of that to sort of decide whether or not we'd recommend that for someone.
Thanks a lot, guys. I just want to ask you before we say goodbye here, if guys wanted to get a hold of you, learn more about what you do, maybe get some help from you, where can they find you?
We have a website, and it's an easy one to remember. It's www.kylieandjonathan, and that's A-N-D, jonathan.com. And we actually do have a customized dating package that we offer for people who are wanting to sort of hone their personal style in preparation for, being their most authentic self when they're dating. So that's something that if your listeners are interested in checking out, we do offer that. And then among other services. So, definitely check us out.
And for the dating package, it's typically a shopping type of session where we will help you get new items, as well as a closet session to help you get rid of items that aren't working for you and make space for what does. And the end goal really is to have 2, 3, 4 working outfits, showing you how to put outfits together. So when you are out dating, that you're coming across how you want to come across. Yeah.
And what's great about that is that it's done, and it's something that does not need to be given thought, because I think a lot of people, it's like anything. It's, well, oh my gosh, I've got this event tonight. What am I going to wear? And panic sets in. So if we can work with someone to make sure that they know they're walking into their closet and they know exactly what they're putting with what, then they're off on their date, and that's out of the way, and they don't have to give it thought. They can just relax and get ready to meet their possible woman of their dreams. It's just a nice way to get that out of the way.
Well, that's excellent. Thanks again, guys. I know I have some things to look at in my own closet now as a result of this conversation.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks for having us.
Hey guys, hope you found that useful. After we recorded this conversation, Kylie Jonathan and I reconnected and created an offer for the listeners of MDM. So, if you live in the Toronto area, you can get a free 30-minute style exploration session with Kylie and Jonathan over the phone or through Skype. Then, if you want to take things a step further, Kylie and Jonathan have a dating package that they described at the end of the interview. They can help you make some simple changes to your look that will allow you to make the kind of impression that you're striving for. If you're anything like me and find shopping for clothes tiring and aggravating, then this is a good way to get the job done quickly and efficiently without exhausting yourself with long excursions to the mall. If you'd like to take advantage of this offer, then you can go to kylieandjonathan.com/MDM. The link will also be in the show notes on mensdatingmastery.com. As always, you can email your feedback to me at alec@mensdatingmastery.com. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast directory is. That will allow me to bring on the best guests and provide you with the most value. That's it for this episode. Join me next week when I will be talking to men's coach Steve Horseman about masculinity in the context of relationships.
Thank you for listening to Men's Dating Mastery, a podcast dedicated to improving the lives of men and the women around them.